What's up everybody, my name's Dan and welcome to Ahnestly. Today we're going to talk about the highly requested Steelcase Leap V2. Now this is the fully loaded model. Everything is in here that you can get. This is the 3D knit back. This is a headrest, which you typically don't see on Leap V2s. And this has the fully adjustable arms. And after testing this one, I realized that it is probably most comparable to this chair on my left, the Sidiz T80. As a matter of fact, I think you get a little bit more bang for buck out of the T80. And I'll be drawing minor comparisons because I've already reviewed this chair in depth, which you guys can check out. I forget which side, one of these sides. And at the end, I'll tell you guys which options I think are worth it and which are definitely not on the Leap V2. Let's get honest. If you guys haven't already, please check out my other channel, The Blind Guys, where we test everything blind so that we can remove all kinds of brand bias, price bias, and all that stuff. As a matter of fact, the T80 was featured on a video there, and it actually came out as someone's #1 winner. I won't spoil it for you guys. And then both of these chairs were featured in part 2, where we blind tested chairs ranging from the $200 all the way up to the $1,600 range. And you guys can see where these guys line up relative to that. I forgot to mention that the Leap V2 is the second generation of Leap, hence the V2. There is a Leap V1, but generally that V1 is omitted. They just call it the Leap. But both the Leap V2 and the T80 can accommodate people who are shorter like me. I'm 5'6", 175 pounds, and it can accommodate people all the way up to like 6'1" and taller. So they do a pretty good job at handling that range of chair. I'll talk about some of the limitations on these chairs for taller folks, but again, we'll get to that as we move along. So starting with the legs. The legs here are probably the only legs that I've tested in a while that are totally rounded on the bottom. And that kind of stinks for me personally because I like to rest my feet on the legs, but it being rounded here, my feet would just fall off really quickly. Or if you have shoes on, then one of the things that you'll probably see if you like to keep your feet on the legs is you'll see a lot of wear on the polish here, or if you have the graphite version, you'll see a kind of like a fading of that color because people like to keep their feet on the corner sometimes and they'll rub their shoe all over it. And again, that ruins kind of the polish on the corners. That's the #1 fading that you'll see from like used Aarons, for example. The casters, I usually don't talk about casters this much, but I want to hear, these are big, beefy casters, and they're a little bit disappointing for a chair of this price because they are noisy. Just listen to this. So they rattle a little bit more than I'd like casters of a chair of this caliber to sound like. Compare that to the T80, which are virtually silent. So yeah, it's a little bit surprising for the price point here. So moving up now to the controls. On the left side here, you've got a paddle which you can pull and then move the seat in and out, which is a pretty simple thing, and it does it really well. It's nice and smooth. And then over here on the right side, you've actually got a couple things going on. So the first thing you have here is this knob. This is your back tension knob. So it allows you to have, it can either be loose or it can be very tight. And then attached to that is going to be the back tilt limiter. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 settings for tilt. So if you're on the first one, you can only go a little bit, and the fourth one, you can go all the way back. Now, what's odd here, there are two cons here about this. One is that the tab sits right where the knob is. So if you are really trying to go crazy on that knob, you will inevitably hit this tab here that's connected to it, and it just kind of gets in the way, and it's not a great design. The second thing is that with the tab all the way down and fully loose, the Leap V2 by far has the least amount of range in which you can tilt back. It's not by far, but it is the least amount, which I think kind of explains why the Leap typically doesn't come with a headrest, because you generally don't need it. Now, one of the good things about the Leap V2 and the T80, although the Leap does it a little bit better, is that when you lean back, if you have it fairly tightened, it's got this kind of, I forget what the mechanism called, but it's got this ability to kind of, it doesn't just let you fall back. Instead, it kind of holds you in place and kind of adjusts, auto adjusts with the amount of tension you put on it. So you can see here that I'm coming down, but I'm not going as far as I can go because there is this system that kind of holds you. It's this auto suspension system that holds you in place. And again, if I just exert more pressure, then I'll go down further. The T80 does it the exact same thing, but again, it's just a little bit nicer on the Leap V2. So here, if I go down, you can see that I'm sitting right here, but I can potentially go down all the way down to here. Not every chair has this, so this is something that's unique to the Leap V2. The second tab on the right side is gonna control the seat height. So if you just pull it, it's gonna go up. And then if you sit down on it and you pull it again, it'll go down. Nothing crazy there. And then in the back here, you get this lumbar what do you call it, vertical lumbar pressure. So you righty tighty and you'll feel a little bit more, and lefty loosey. Now honestly, I don't feel a lot of difference in the mid zones, like if you're kind of in the middle of spinning it. I only really feel it if you're fully loose or if you're fully tight. And even then it's not a huge difference, but it does hug your back a little bit more in that fully tight position. And I would recommend that you keep it there because it does a nice job of kind of enveloping your back a little bit. Moving to the seat. This is one of two areas where I think the Leap V2 is superior to the T80. The first one was the warranty, which I already talked about. And the second one is gonna be this seat. This is very, very well cushioned. It's pretty comfortable, and it does a better job at keeping your butt from feeling the plastic compared to the T80. Now you can still definitely feel the hard plastic underneath after a while of sitting. And the other thing to keep in mind is that because it's so densely cushioned, that I felt myself getting toasty in this chair after about 10 minutes. So yeah, it definitely has a better seat than the T80, but you do get hotter a little bit quicker, and you still just can't get around feeling a little bit of plastic on your butt cheeks, especially if you're on the heavier end. One thing I forgot to mention about the seat is that it's wide and it's cloth all around. So for you rebels out there who want to sit cross-legged, you're gonna have no problem doing so. However, if you're on the bigger side, you're definitely gonna want to stretch that seat pan out first and then cross up, and you're gonna find yourself having plenty of space. Now, moving to the arms. These are the fully loaded arms, and I'll show you all the ways that they can be adjusted. So if you pull this tab here, you can obviously go up and down. The range of motion is pretty good, right? So you can go from here to there, and then you can also slide it kind of, so it can go in and out, but it's not a direct in and out like you would see on most chairs. Like for example, on the T80, it would just go directly in and out. But here, you have to kind of swivel in and out. So that if you look at it here, you kind of have to kind of go up and in and out like this. And then from in here, you can slide it in or out like this. The arm padding here is really nice. So it's hard in terms of like, it's supportive, but it's softer than, for example, what's found on the Embody. So they do a really nice job at kind of bringing the best of both worlds. The arms can also pivot in if you want to. I never really found the pivot useful on any chair really. And so, except for the Aeron, because they pivot on the corners of the arm, not in the middle of the arms. I just find this to be weird. Like, who uses a chair with the arms pivoted in like this? I don't know, maybe you do. Now moving to the back of the seat. First things first, the back of the seat has a lumbar height adjustment using these two tabs back here. You can grab it and you can lift it up or down. And it's actually really similar to what you get on the T80 here, which also has the same mechanism where you can grab these tabs here and you can lift or you can lower the lumbar support. So that is that. And yeah, you feel a difference for sure. Like if you get it lower, you definitely feel it, versus if it's higher, you definitely feel it there. Now something that's gonna be a little bit odd is that the range of this back tension or the back lumbar is so high that if you have it in its highest setting for some reason and then you decide to lean back, it doesn't feel good. Like because at that point you're exerting pressure in the middle of your spine. Like imagine if you're trying to lay down on a bed and then somebody put a ball, that's obviously overly exaggerated, but let's say somebody put a ball in the middle of your spine, that's not gonna feel very good, right? So if you're gonna lean back and you have it high up, you might wanna lower it first and then lean back to get a more natural feel. So that is the lumbar. Now the 3D knit back here. I thought this 3D knit back was supposed to be more breathable because it's got these perforated holes. I don't think that's the case because this back is really, really warm. Instead, it's supposed to be more supportive, more comfortable. To be honest, I don't really notice that huge of a difference. I think it's a good back, but it's just the back. The T80 on the other hand has mesh, and it's a really tight mesh, and I prefer this system over against a cloth back. If it's gonna have any mesh at all, I want it to have some mesh on the back. The seat can be tricky because to implement a really good mesh that's not gonna sag after a while is really hard to do. But this mesh on the back here is really tight, it's super breathable, and it feels really supportive. Like even though it may not have a lumbar tightener, the nature of the mesh kind of hugs you much better than cloth will. And again, it being breathable, it's my winner here. Now, moving up to my #1 hated thing about this chair, and it's the headrest. This is by far the crappiest headrest I've ever used on any chair at any price point. It is that bad. And the #1 and the reason why is because first of all, look how forward this headrest is, and you cannot adjust it anyway. It is literally just on there like that. And it can't even pivot forward or back. And the only adjustment you can make is up and down, and that is it. And the reason why this sucks is because if I'm trying to sit in the chair in an upright position, and you guys saw whenever I was sitting here, I was leaning forward, right? But if I'm sitting in an upright position, the headrest kind of leans forward so much. Let me lock this chair right now. It's so forward that if I'm trying to sit back properly in my chair, it's always touching the back of my head, and I hate that feeling. When I'm sitting up, and generally for you guys as well, when you're sitting up, you should try to avoid using a headrest as much as possible. Again, this is when you're in proper seated position, because if you do that, you might atrophy the neck muscles and eventually end up with a neck that kind of protrudes because you've atrophied a lot of those muscles. So when I sit up, I don't like having a headrest there. I like to just sit up. It's when I lean back that I want the headrest there. But in this case, if I'm seated up properly, I constantly feel it tickling the back of my neck. I imagine if you're taller, it's gonna be more annoying for you as well. And then the fact that you can't really adjust it any which way means that if you're not comfortable with it, then you're SOL, right? You can't do anything about it. And then the worst thing about it is that if you wanted to remove this thing, you can't. I'm sorry about all the phone noises. You can't, because there's no screws, there's no way you can get rid of this thing, at least not as far as I know. It might be connected, but I feel like you might damage your chair in doing so. But at least the way I see it here, there's no way to remove this headrest. You can't take it off. So yeah, it's really, really crappy for a $1,400 chair. You just don't get this one. So my overall thoughts. For $1,000, I think this chair is just okay. And I say 1,000 because I'm assuming that you're not gonna get the headrest and assuming you're gonna get the regular back, which should be about $1,000 brand new. I think the features are just a little too simple, and while the build quality is super solid, I think it's just an okay chair with good lumbar support. I think there are a lot of chairs that are just good chairs with lumbar support. As a matter of fact, the T80, the reason why I say pick this over this is because this is $700. It comes with a headrest that's a little bit better. The seat may not be as good as the Steelcase's seat, but there are some workarounds around that, including getting like other seat paddings. And then this chair has an additional feature where you can tilt forward to relieve pressure off of that lower back. So it's able to do just a little bit more, has a little bit more for a cheaper price, which is why overall I'm like, look, if you're looking for a pretty good office chair, I think the T80 offers you all of that plus a little extra with the extra features of the forward tilt feature. So yeah, let me know if you guys agree or disagree in the comments below. If you guys want to check out my other chair reviews, including the Sidiz T80 or my #1 chair pick in that $500 range, you guys can see all of that over here, and check out my other chair reviews as well. Until next time guys, stay safe, and as always, stay honest.